Joel Oltmann, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you on. What would be the easiest way for our listeners to understand how the Colorado election was stolen? And then what are the specifics that we can look to which show us it getting stolen actually took place?
Well, I mean, we have to go all the way back. I posted a picture of this morning of the Colorado elections and what happened from 2000 all the way to 2020, and how it leaned dramatically to Democrats from 2004 to 2008. Well, what happened during that time? We didn't know this when I started this in 2020, but Eric Coomer was hired by Sequoia Voting Systems 1 month after Smartmatic bought them. They were in 17 states in the District of Columbia. We know that CFIS, which is an organization that oversees national security threats, got involved in 2006 after a municipal election in Chicago where 24 Venezuelan nationals were flown there, and they had a bunch of funny business, votes flipping and everything else happened in that election. So fast forward to 2009, Dominion Voting Systems was, acquired Sequoia Voting Systems. But in the middle of that, Colorado specifically had the mandate for mail-in votes. And so when we start talking about mail-in votes and how they work side by side with the election machines, it was just a matter of time before people started to figure out that they were injecting fraudulent mail-in ballots that didn't exist into a system that was allowed to collectively, from precinct to precinct, roll up into a final vote. From 2004 to 2008, it moved almost 14 points. 14 points. 14 points from a +5, I think it was +4, +5 in the Republican sector to +9 in the Democrat line. Well, if you match it up to the number of people that moved to Colorado during that time, you just look at human condition, a 14-point swing would be not improbable, but impossible. It would represent 151% of the people that moved to Colorado or migrated to Colorado over that 4-year period of time. 151% of them would have to be Democrat. In other words, you'd have to have a huge conversion of about 51% in the current population of Colorado that moved from Republican to Democrat. And by the way, this counts all the people that turned 18. They would have to all be Democrats. So it's not only improbable, it's impossible. And you see the same trend in each one of the states, whether you talk about Oregon or Washington or California, where they made this mandate, they made this switch over to mail-in votes. Now, the bigger the state, the easier it is to do, because the bigger the precincts and the easier it is to manufacture fraudulent and phantom ballots out of nowhere. But the machines, that's where it all started. And so we've had 20 years, including 2022 and 2024. There has not been an election in this country in the last decade, not an election in any state that is not fraudulent. Not one election. I don't care if you use ES&S, Smartmatic, Clear Ballot. It doesn't matter to me. All 50 states are represented by people who were selected, not elected, and they're not the rightful. And even some of them that did get put in office because they were rightfully elected, because the sentiment towards them was too high. There was still manipulation in those elections, and we've been able to prove that even past the misinformation, disinformation, and some of the things that people have been able to say.
That's a great introduction to this. I was able to get Ralph Pizzullo on, the co-author of Stolen
Great
Elections.
Book.
It was revolutionary for me, because there was a moment during 2020, right afterwards, that I was approached by some sources to go track down the original Venezuelan American coders who wrote the original code for Sequoia, right? The ATM machines that worked with Chavez's reelection. And so we started the process of trying to go find these guys who were living in Boca Raton, and, the company was started in Del Rey. And so when Lara Logan had Gary Bernstein on, who was a hero of mine from when I found out about him at the agency in special operations, when you realize who led the Jawbreaker team. So, these are people that have profound investigative abilities with him and Martin Rodil. And when you read that book and you discover the magnitude of influence on election tampering, not only in America, they estimate it's 10,000 elections or more since 2008. And then 72 international elections have been flipped. That's the point where you go, okay, this is a national security threat. But when you look at, because we also had Colonel Sean Smith on, who talked about the way Secretary of States would not follow up on these accusations to do criminal investigation. So it's almost a dual negligence of national security level threats, CIA, FBI, et cetera, Homeland, and internal states that were responsible for just a blind eye to this. Is that what you've seen in your investigations as well, too? Is that it's just flagrant corruption that nobody's being held accountable for?
You know, I think we have to look at it from two lenses. One, you have bad actors, and you have a lot of bad actors. And unfortunately, you talked about the CIA and their involvement in these elections that have been flipped. Well, I mean, it's no secret the CIA has destroyed the sovereignty of nations all over the world since World War II. Or actually since they were created. Mm-hmm. And before it was the CIA, obviously had another intelligence community that was doing the same thing.
Right.
So they just adopted this ability to basically install or remove world leaders around the world. Well, they then turned their attention to the United States. Now, you have two types of people that are involved in this. You have the people that are complicit in that behavior, and that number of people has grown, right? So to see what has happened in the country and to have the evidence that we have, you would have to be complicit at this point if you're telling us that we do not have stolen, fraudulent elections across the board. You're complicit. But let's go back into 2008, 2010. You also had another group of people that were easily manipulated and or bullied into the idea of there's nothing to see here. Mm-hmm. So just one phone call to that Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State's like, this isn't a fight I want to fight, where they say, hey, listen, you're not going to be elected again if you actually cause any more trouble. And it was the party apparatuses that had more control back then, right? Mm-hmm. Now that's shifted. And it's no longer party apparatus. It's the technocracy. It's the NGO units that are out there. It's the billionaires, and it's the different special interest groups that we can't see, the wizards that are behind the curtain. And typically those were represented by CIA assets, you know, for decades. So now we have them out in the open being funded by taxpayer dollars through these large networks. And frankly, they're not going to talk now. It's the same thing. You have the complicit people, and then you have the people that aren't going to talk because, frankly, they're benefiting by the tens of millions of dollars, keep their mouths shut, and get these contracts. And then those people just go out there and create this kind of false front. So, you know, it's evolved. It's evolved over the last couple decades. But the same outcome is true, and that is we have a rotted system in place that has only gotten more rotted. Now it's a shell of its former self.
I completely agree. I mean, from the moment that I first was in special operations and what we were doing late 90s, early 2000s to when I was working at the CIA over in Afghanistan, Pakistan, you saw the manipulation of the narrative that was not conducive to what was actually going on the ground. And I remember after 2011, that's really where I was like, whoa, you're seeing this manipulation of what's taking place on a battlefield. Well, the new battlefield came, the information campaigns that were then being integrated into the American population, right? And that really, for me, was Obama, right? And the Obama machine led by, some of his, what was it, Rob Emanuel and the infrastructure of his team, right? To begin to manipulate that messaging. Well, I think fast forward, you see that now in a way, like you said, the parties are more global in terms of the financial influence and the outcomes that they're looking for. You're on the Untamed podcast, you guys did a recent show called The Hidden Money Machine and Rigging Elections. Can you basically describe the infrastructure that you found and were able to kind of aggregate those outside financial interests with localized NGOs impacting elections?
Yeah, so this traces back all the way to 2021, where I uncovered about 140 to 160 NGOs in Colorado that were directly related to what are called no-show jobs. And so we started to look into nonprofits and go, well, that's where you would hide in plain sight because you have no government oversight. You don't have any sort of audit ability. You can't do any FOIA requests. And the same thing can be said for our election systems. You see how Dominion Voting Systems is funded by this outside money tree that if you shake it all the way down from the Carlyle Group, it makes no sense why they would invest the money they did or the evaluation they had, nor the outcome of the elections and the fact that we wouldn't have access to or transparency to our elections. So, it's not difficult to see, if you just slow down for a minute and get rid of all the white noise, how these nonprofits have been funded by the hundreds of millions of dollars. You have the ERIC system, which connected all the different states together. That's against the law. And because every state's supposed to have its own autonomous elections, it's supposed to be, it's supposed to have its own ability to operate separately from every other state. That's what is supposed to create this legalized ability for us to have representative government at the federal level, including the president of the United States. So when you take all those and strip all those things away, and you create this group of nonprofits that are out there, those nonprofits then can act as the bully stick. I mean, I'm talking about the Anti-Defamation League, ACLU. I mean, these are big organizations, and we've been able to uncover all of these pieces. If you go back, David, and look at what we did with Act Blue and the thing that the investigation into that, and even if you looked at what we were able to uncover for WinRed, right? Same thing, that you had these small donor activities that added up to hundreds of thousands of dollars that were run through credit card transactions or corporate transactions that you weren't able to validate. And yet, what happened to that? Anybody arrested? Anybody at all?
Zilch.
Yeah. So, and then you put on top of that the media apparatus. And so you have NGOs that are funding out the media apparatus and putting money into their coffers. It is one big cartel. Right. But here's the part: when President Trump cut off USAID, that was a good start to cut off funding, by the way, to the CIA. That eliminated some of the strongholds in Africa and Middle East and Eastern Europe,
especially.
Yeah. So if you, and people don't understand how that apparatus works. And I agree. I'm a unicorn. Like when I grab onto a bone, I don't let it go. I'm a data guy. I have a data company. So I go through and I try to just map out what I'm looking at and then validate each part of it. Well, the nonprofits right now are running things, and the nonprofits are running things where behind the scene money is able to be funneled in, and then that money ends up where? It ends up in the congressional pockets of different campaigns, so they can make sure they can strengthen and bolster the voice of those people while crushing the dissenting view and or voice of the American people. Well, so it becomes really obvious.
Well, that was crazy when you saw, I forget how many Republicans voted to refund the National Endowment for Democracy, which has participated in the most recent one, was Lula's election and after a 4 million people uprising in Brazil, right? They came in and started funding all the NGO activities that were able to quash that as well. We saw it in Romania. We saw it all over the place. So,
yeah, the Balkans were even the worst. I mean, Balkans were the worst. And by the way, you can trace all the stuff back in the activity for Dominion voting system, specifically Eric Coomer, John Polos, and Garin, who's the Garin, which is by the head of Dominion. He started Dominion in Serbia, then moved it to Canada. It wasn't a Canadian company. It was a Serbian company run by a Serbian who used to be in Serbian intelligence. And more importantly, he was involved in the Kosovo conflict, which was not that long ago, right? But we didn't do background checks on any of the coders. We allowed them to operate on foreign soil. We broke the trust of the American people. And then when the American people said something, they just took this apparatus of NGOs and said, these are threats to democracy. These are threats to democracy. I got news for them. We're not a democracy. And they didn't expect to have as many people rise up and do the things that they're doing now in order to uncover it.
Well, when you look at the history of color revolutions, right, and I believe Kosovo was the first coordinated modern color revolution that integrates all these different systems that you're talking about. And we just got better and better at running those, to where you saw the pivot in 2014, where after Maidan in Ukraine, they started going, well, hey, we could possibly figure out how to do this in America. And that's where you saw Mark Elias, Norm Eisen, in the whole infrastructure of the Russiagate, including Brennan, Clapper, and Obama, get together and were able to internalize this and direct us towards the American people, which culminated, I believe, in 2020 with the pandemic, with the election, with Act Blue and the BLM riots, and then obviously the election shenanigans, right, to take down Trump because he was such an existential threat.
Well, I mean, David, if you start looking at that and then start looking at the other pieces that are necessary for this to happen, you can start looking at the apparatuses that were created in the judiciary. So now you can't go after those nonprofits because you have activist judges, and they were put in there by people who were selected, not elected. And so once they got to a place of density, you know how density works. Once you get to a place of density, that density allows for them to get away with anything, because then as long as they hold the keys to the kingdom with the chief judge or the chief judge in certain areas, and that's why you see the 10th district for, it's started to get more and more radical when Biden appointed people to the bench there, 9th district, and you start seeing how radical that is. You can start to see then the radicalization of the state by state coup to steal the voice of the people there. I mean, Colorado's a perfect example. We live under a slave environment. There's nothing more to describe it. It went from a $12 billion budget 7 years ago to a $40 billion budget now. And the people here statistically are making about 16% less than they were 7 years ago. So 16% less, and we have to fund 2/3 more or 3x more the budget for the state. It's not hard to see that the people here are suffering, right? And all while, nonprofits and certain groups of people that have been stealing elections and stealing the people's voice are thriving.
Well, we're paying for them to defeat our republic. And that's, that's the complicated. All right. Patriotism isn't a marketing trend for Black Rifle Coffee Company. It's the foundation of the company. Black Rifle Coffee Company has been built on it since day one. Their American roasted coffee not only fuels your day, but gives back to veterans, first responders, and their families with every single purchase. Last year, they eliminated medical debt, helped build homes, provided for natural disaster response teams, funded education for children of fallen warriors, and so much more. So, as America hits its 250th year, BRCC is kicking off 2026 with killer new products and the same great mission that they've had from the start. Just go grab a bag of Tacti-Squatch, Walk in the Neighbors, or the Spirit of 76. Roasts for people who get up early, train hard, and don't quit. Hoo-yah, I love that one. And to fuel the new year, they're dropping cold brew coffee cans in just black and vanilla. No fluff, no excuses, just clean caffeine. You gotta know I love that. Need something with ever more horsepower? Grape X brings 200 milligrams of caffeine, zero sugar, and a great blast that hits harder than the door charge. All right, if you're looking for BRCC coffee, find it at Walmart, Target, Kroger, your local Black Rifle coffee shop, or blackriflecoffee.com. Black Rifle Coffee, veteran founded, American roasted. This is America's coffee. Booyah. When I'm sure when you go out and now you're campaigning in the Republican primary to run for the governor of Colorado. And by the way, my parents had a place in Snowmass for about 22 years. I grew up going there. It's one of my favorite states by far. I think the Woody Creek Tavern could be one of my favorite places on earth, right? And which is ironic because, with Hunter Thompson running for sheriff and on the other side, I think he would probably be running on our side nowadays because of the insanity on his part, right? But when you look at the scale of this, I'm sure when you address audiences and you start to pick at the edges of it, must be this look of horror. What is your plan as you go out and campaign in all the little towns and all this bigger areas around Colorado? What's your plan to educate these people in the limited amount of time you might have in these political campaign events to wake them up and show them how to connect these dots?
Well, I'm in a unique position because I've got about 8 million people listen to my podcast across different things. So, there's a lot of people in Colorado who listen to me and have listened to me for years. And there's people who listen to me because they don't like me. And there's people who listen to me because they do like me. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy for both. actually. I want to say thank you right now. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. But the thing about what we've been able to, you talk about what's happened in Democrat, Republican, Independent, what's happening there. I spend more time talking to Democrats than I do Republicans. And the reason being is that if I get the nod for the nomination, I go on to run against Bennett and or Weiser. Weasel Weiser probably is going to be in prison, so I'm not going to have to worry about him. So let's just say Bennett at this point. And you're running against a man like Bennett. The problem in politics is that we've never listened to the people. Right?
Never.
People are starving for a voice. And this predates the last 20 years. And I think you have to go back to the Reagan district or Reagan era and the cancer that was created after he left office of, hey, look, just trust us, bro. We got things handled. We know how things are going, right? So when I have a conversation with people in the community, I'm like, listen, first of all, your elections are absolutely fraudulent. Number two, what do you have to lose? I'm a guy that runs a business that did a couple $100 million in revenue. I've been in business for 14 years, never taken a dollar of outside capital. I got hundreds of employees. I'm in multiple markets. I've been fighting this fight for 6 years. It's cost me tens of millions of dollars. Cost me the sale of my company. So I can't be bought. They've already tried, right? Nobody's going to get me to back down. They've come to my house with guns. They've tried to do harm to my family. I don't care. I'm a really good shot and I'm not afraid of the fight. But more importantly, I want them to know that we have to go into the community first and listen to them and then lead together. So you have to be able to say, what are the things that you're going to, that is most important to them? Now, every debate that I've done, David, every debate I've done, they're like, how are you going to balance a budget? I'm like, nobody in this room cares about a $40 billion budget. They can't buy milk, right? They can't put their kids through school. Their property tax has tripled over the last 4 years. You want to talk to me about a budget? How about this? How about we just doge the government, turn everything off, and when things squeal, we'll turn things back on. Let's get our budget back to $12 billion. Let's get rid of property tax. Let's gut the judiciary and take away qualified immunity for judges and for DAs. So when they do bad things to the people in the public, they have to pay for it. You want police officers to pay for it, but you don't want the people at the top that are throwing people in jail for 20 years and letting criminals out on the street. You don't want to hold them accountable? No, we're going to get rid of that. Get rid of tollways, get rid of property tax, and do things. And so when you talk this way, they've never heard a politician talk this way, right? This is common sense. This is like, I need a smaller waist. I've gotten a little porky, right? I need to get on a diet. So you start cutting things off, right? And make sure that the things that the people need, which is what the government's meant to do. Yeah. It's meant to be given essentials so you can actually go out and get opportunities. And right now they've just regulated us to a place of absolute indentured servitude.
I call it the Independence Declaration, right? Where candidates have to come out and essentially say what our forefathers said we were responsible for doing in the first, preamble of that declaration. It's time for us to throw out the shackles of a dysfunctional government. And so it's all of the things. What was interesting in that description of what you're telling potential voters for you is the qualified immunity. Now, there has been a case dancing before the Supreme Court right now about qualified immunity. Now, it seems like a smaller case. It was some cops ended up shooting a man that wasn't breaking any laws. He was cooperating. They conjured up this idea that they had the right to execute him. And we've seen J6ers have been executed that way. We've seen a lot of stuff. But the way you're describing it is directly correlated to judges that are misrepresenting the law. Can you discuss that approach for me a little bit? Because I think that's the one that you can really have an impact on all of these radical judges that have been placed in our system.
Yeah, so the system across 46 out of 50 states makes it nearly impossible to remove a judge from service, right? Short of killing someone, even you have judges that are serving on the bench that are under probation right now that are committed DUIs, they've committed assault on their wives. They by any other means, they would be in jail. And you would say, well, Joe, that's a small percentage. I would tell you, is 4% a small percentage? When you're talking about judges that are doling out consequences against the American people, well, that's how big the number is. Potentially, it's 3 to 4%, right? And so when you look at what judges do and how they treat people, they wreck people's lives. I've talked to attorneys across the board. I'm now involved in a case, and I've seen the long arm of justice where they have a back room. They have that backroom conversations, sua sponte conversations with people to say, hey, look, I want you to throw the book at them. I've also seen cases where people go out and try to abduct a 10-year-old little girl off of an elementary school, and three days later, that guy's back on the street, right? These judges are committing crimes against the American people, and they're rewriting what the law is based on precedent that's gone on for a couple hundred years, right? The entire system related to judges is the reason why, we can't get to the bottom of election fraud, because they'll say it's moot. It's you don't have standing, right? You saw that happen at the highest level. You saw that happen. And basically it was fear-based. Like John Roberts says, you saw that they were burning stuff in the streets. So he made a decision to get rid of the Texas v. Pennsylvania case because he was afraid that there would be riots. That's not how we run our country, right? We run our country based on fact, not fiction. We run our country based on truth, absolute truth, not your truth, not my truth, not anyone else's truth. And so we've got to this place where these judges and these DAs, they're actually deciding. They're the henchmen, right? They're the earners inside of the, you have the bosses, you have the captains, you have the earners and the enforcers. Well, they're the enforcers that are out there basically doling out, with impunity against good people, but then letting criminals out on the street. It's got to stop, right? Yeah. And so you got to go in and you got to just clean out the judges. You make one, I want a citizens group that basically is able to hear every case, not an internal, hey, we're here, just trust us, bro. We're gonna police ourselves. You want something on the outside that's run by citizens, kind of like having a jury that's able to look at cases and say, is that legal or is it not legal? And if it's illegal and the judge does that, they get admonished the first time, they get kicked off the bench the second time. We've got to get to a place where we have accountability at every level, and we don't have it. Yeah. These judges are literally run amok. Look what they've done to President Trump. 171 orders that go against, as if the judges are the ones that run our country.
That's right.
Sit down. No. It was never meant to be that. And the judiciary was never meant to be a checks and balance against the president of the United States in his capacity as commander in chief.
Well, I think that's where Norm Eisen comes in. I mean, he's the architect of this thing globally. He's the architect with his help from Mark Elias. And they're, I was, after meeting David Clements and interviewing him, it was awesome. Yeah. He's really he's probably, I think in my mind, there's, the pain. He's able to articulate the pain in such a welcoming way that it's infectious. Like it pulls you into this fight so dramatically because he's so eloquent the way he describes it. And, and then that led me to the next guy. Now I'm at you, and that's my whole thing. I'm right there with you now. It's like now that all the pieces are together, I find like, all right, it's the elections. If we don't get this back, it's all over. It's done. But when I saw, Judge Roberts went over to Eastern Europe with Norm Eisen, had a relationship with him doing there. But I through David, I was able to talk to Doc Doherty, who was the data analyst of that one Supreme Court case. And we're trying to figure out a time to get out to Texas, do an interview with him. But when you talk about how unwilling the entire process is in just allowing information to get in front of a judge like that, the system is broken, right? If the basic standards of evidence and the ability to introduce evidence into the case is shut down, it's proof positive that the whole system is shut down. And that's why I think, and to, pivot a little bit in your interpretation of Dominion and Eric Comer and his recent, I know you're very involved in what's going on with his recent depositions and his admission of working overseas with people, do you believe now, because you just said that one of the people you're running again, they're going to be indicted, all this is coming, a lot of your posts lately, if this is coming, judgment's coming. Why do you believe now, where we're at, that judgment is going to come and we're going to have some significant legal proceedings engage against these people?
Well, I will say, but God.
Yeah,
but God, President Trump would not have been elected in 2024. And it took human intervention on our side, the recognition that it's good versus evil, right? And you could see that was, you have someone like Elon Musk, who has been pretty agnostic, not really talked much about God or even faith. And you saw him make this monumental shift in early or late 2023 And that continued to shift through 2024 and recognizing really where the battle is and pulling back some of his big dreams to something that is more attainable. You see him talking now about going to the moon, not going to Mars, and hey, let's get to the moon first, and really trying to reset the calibration of history. But you saw over 4 years, the American spirit did not stop fighting for truth. We could see it with our own eyes. Right? We knew that the elections were fraudulent. We knew they stole the election with President Trump. Now it's more important to realize that they stole it at the local level and they stole it state by state first. That allowed for them to get to the place where they would have the apparatus in place to steal it from President Trump. But God, President Trump won in 2024. They didn't expect it to happen. And if it wasn't for Elon Musk and it wasn't for some really powerful abilities to interfere with the ability to inject from Dominion voting systems into the systems here in the United States, that wouldn't have happened. So they were able to prevent some of the scrambling, some of the PID controllers, they were able to stop that from happening. And then on the local level, you had people that were watching like a hawk everything that happened and were ready to go to blows, right? In every precinct, right? And the only place that didn't happen was in Colorado. And obviously we're going to get to talk about Tina Peters. So I think that we have to start looking at this from the perspective of everything builds, and the story is there. You have the ODNI report, which has not been made public yet. I think when that comes out, you're going to be absolutely amazed at how much information they do have and who they know is involved. You have the information out of the Coomer case that again a federal judge sealed, the Dominion case that a federal judge sealed in the Dominion v. Patrick Byrne. That is going to show Eric Coomer to be what Eric Coomer has always been, which is a lying traitor. And I believe he's a lying traitor. My belief is he is a lying traitor because he has lied over and over again about me. And I now have evidence of what Dominion did, and he was the guy in charge, right? So that leads me down to, why do I think that these are coming? They just nabbed Maduro.
Yep.
They were eating Skittles, and 100 of Delta Force went in. And while President Trump's eating Skittles in the room, and they plucked him out like it was like they were going to the supermarket, right?
Yeah.
A leader of a sovereign nation, he reached in to Venezuela and said, "Come with me, buddy. Oh, and I'm taking your wife too," right? That shows me the seriousness behind what they're doing. Now, I don't believe that they have the DOJ on board.
No,
but I think President Trump is going to give them an opportunity to do it publicly. And if they don't do it publicly, he's going to pull the lever for an emergency order. He's going to sign the Insurrection Act. He's going to bring in military tribunals. He's going to present the evidence in front of generals, which is that's why he brought the generals in. He said, you're either going to follow me or you're going to get the F out.
Yeah.
Right? Those are your two choices. So at this point, I know what people in Colorado have played, what part they played in the persecution of Tina Peters. I know there are investigators that work for the AG's office that were a part of that. I know that the Secretary of State was involved with it. The governor was involved in it. I know Phil Weiser was directing it through Merrick Garland at the DOJ. Mm-hmm. So, I just have too many parts of the puzzle. And I know for a fact, President Trump is not going to go he's not going to get to this midterm and put his family in jeopardy again, like he did the 4 years he did under Biden. He doesn't have an appetite for it. And frankly, he wants blood. I don't feel the same way he does. I do want blood, but I think vengeance belongs to the Lord. But I'm going to tell you, if you don't think that arrests are coming, and they know they're coming, they went into Fulton County, they went into Maricopa County. Yep. Man, they are not playing, and they're coming to Colorado to basically start whooping butts. Yeah. I'm right next to the DHS center. They had like 200 SUVs delivered. Yeah. I took a picture of it and I was like, ha
I love that picture. That picture was awesome. That got me fired up. All right. Thank you for that great description. Let's talk Tina Peters. I mean, obviously she's near and dear to my heart. She's a Gold Star mom of a teen guy. And, the entire fiasco, which is, this is supposed to be the epitome of what represents goodness and decency, as somebody that saw wrongdoing, acted under the pretense of the law that she was given in her position as an election official. And then now she's facing a 9-year jail sentence because of complete corruption. Why is she so pivotal, not only to Colorado, but the entire thing as a whole?
Well, because she was the one that had enough courage to stand up. And even when they took shots at her, she doubled down. When they took shots at her again, they doubled down. Even when the corruption with the judge and the DA and And they went in front of the commissioners and said, hey, look, there's no there. And the person they asked whether or not there was a there was Dominion. She kept being boisterous. She kept speaking out. She kept speaking truth. There's 4 reports, not 3 reports. But in those reports, you had Mark Cook and others that were involved in saying, look, these are the stored procedures. These are where the code can be flipped. Here's how the vulnerabilities work. And Tina Peters was an example of, listen, I'm telling you, I was a county clerk and recorder. I didn't believe there was election fraud in 2020. It wasn't until the municipal election in 2021 that I saw that there was funny business, because we knew that those people did not have the ability to get elected. There's nothing in the system that would have shown within the community that those people would be the ones that were elected for this municipal election. That caused her to look under the hood. And then when Jenna Griswold came in and said, let's do the trusted build, Jenna Griswold knew what she was doing, right? She knew what she was doing. She put the BIOS passwords out there. So, I mean, I think Tina is a lightning rod. She's an example. She's a 70-year-old Gold Star mom. She's an example of a person. It doesn't matter what age you are, doesn't matter what position you have. She's and I don't want to use Joan of Arc, but short of being burned at the stake, Joan of Arc stood all the way to the bitter end, and Tina Peters has done the same thing. It should have a different outcome. We have all the levers of power right now. We should be yielding those levers of power. But, Tina Peters is an example of what every American should be doing right now, which is standing up, speaking truth, and acting in that truth in order to drive this devil back into the hole it came from.
How do we obviously the greatest challenge is to get people to act, and we're up against a very coordinated effort. We're up, against the most advanced science that you can face in terms of algorithmic. We're up against the most advanced censorship industrial complex we've ever seen. And we're up against, quite frankly, a cabal of mafias that are in control of the major systems of world, how the world runs. As a person that could take over the state of Colorado, going back to what are you going to tell the Democrats, Republicans, independents, whoever, people that have never voted, what are you going to tell them is the solution that you can bring to the forefront of this fight? And what is the impact it'll make instantaneously in their lives if they vote for you?
Well, I mean, I think the bottom line is prior to me getting involved in politics, I was already serving. Like, I sat on every board. I built and engineered systems that help make people's lives better. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, my wife and I, giving people access to private school education, to opportunities to go to school. I funded scholarships. I worked with, and some of them were even illegal. I would help them get access to food and education and certain resources. I worked with United Way. I worked with Village Exchange Center. I worked with, the Dream Center. I worked with the incarcerated youth. I worked with men that got out of prison after serving 10 years of a 20-year sentence. So I've been serving almost like since I got before the after Jesus from 2007 on. I mean, I spent 6.5 years in the Middle East and Africa. Arabia. I learned Arabic. I spent a lot of time in places that nobody else would want to go. I came home, started my business, had it for 14 years. I know how to run things when it comes to, looking at the financial beacons and where we should actually spend money, where we shouldn't. And frankly, I can't be bought. Yeah. Right. And so by going into this environment, look, running a state is not that hard. Mm-hmm. It's not. You have basic necessities, make sure the roads are good, make sure the education system is handed back to the parents, make PTOs and PTAs great again, right? Instead, you have a bloated administration that pulls off 70% of the cost of education, and parents are running away from it. 20% of kids in the state of Colorado were homeschooled. Wow. It was 1.5% just 5 years ago. 1.5%. So they're running away from the grooming of children. I'd strip the flags out of the pride flags out of the classroom. I'd get rid of teachers that show up wearing rainbow colored hair. And I would tell them, get back to professional standards, and you teach them math, science, English, and the basics. That's what you're here for. I don't care what your political view is. I don't care what you think. But if you start talking to the kids about that, you're going to get kicked out. I would shrink the ability for teachers unions to have as much influence as they have over school boards. I would make school boards actually follow the law. And frankly, I would just get to a place where the people in the community have a voice. And if people break that voice, I'll sign an executive order immediately and say, okay, now we're going to sanction your community. We're going to sanction your city. So I think the people of Colorado need people, not just me, but they need people in positions of trust and authority that don't care about fear of loss. Like I don't operate from fear of loss. We're going to come after you. Okay, come after me. And what's next? I was never making it out of this life alive anyway, right? So, I mean, it's just a matter of, I want to make it as fun as possible. And I want to make it as worth it as possible while I'm here. So I believe in the saying that I think that you probably do as well. I am my brother's keeper. And we must be our brothers and sisters' keeper. And that's not Democrat, that's not Republican, that's not independent. That is, can we have a conversation about what's needed in the community and then just eliminate everything else that is stopping people from reaching their full potential and reaching that American dream? And I think we can.
Amen. Joe, how can people donate to your campaign, and then where can they find you to listen to everything you got going on?
Oltmann 2026, OLTMANN 2026.com. And you can go to, Untamed Nation. We're a pretty popular podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeart, TuneIn, and more. We're also on Rumble, X. We have untamednation.com. We're pretty much everywhere. I've been canceled from every platform at least once. So I often say that I finally am getting back to the place where at the end of this, I'm going to sue everybody. I'm going to sue everyone. It's going to be a sue party. I have lawyers that are like, we're going to sue 800 people. And I was like, yeah, for billions of dollars. You want to see look, I was selling my company for $200 million. It's at least worth $2 billion now.
I think right? So. I think you ought to sue every last one of them, man, for sure. Awesome. Well, sir, keep up the great work. Thank you so much for your time, and God bless you and good luck.
I will say this one thing, one Bible verse that I want you to remember. It's on the floor of my garage. I drive over it every day. Galatians 4:16. Am I the enemy because I tell you the truth? And just remember that, because if somebody becomes your enemy because you're speaking the truth, they were never your friend to begin with.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you, Joe. God bless you.